Hey everyone, Michelle here, personal trainer and lifestyle coach. Today we are here to talk about our June 2023 theme of the month, being an effective listener. Now, one of the podcasts that I listened to recently was featuring Oscar Trimboli. He is the author of Deep Listening. And what he basically talks about is the idea that about 80% of people think that they are better listeners than the average person. Now, if you think about that, that's impossible, right? It'd have to be 50%. So we all think that we're really great listeners, but there are quite a few habits that we might have that derail ourselves in terms of listening properly to other people. So what he calls these are villains. There are 4 different types of villains. Villain number 1 is going to be your dramatic listener. Villain number 2, your interrupting listener. Villain number 3, the lost listener. And villain number 4, the shrewd listener. I will include the link to the podcast below so you can really listen to it and get some additional information. But I'm just going to go over a brief introduction to each of the different types of listeners so we can get an idea of maybe what your villain might be. The other thing that you can go do is go to listeningquiz.com, and they have a quiz on there that only takes about 7 minutes or less in order to be able to identify which of these habits you might have strongly. They'll have both a primary and a secondary for you, and then they'll have suggestions on how you might be able to work on your listening. And remember, it is a skill. It's something that can be developed, can be honed, so it's something that we'll continue to work on throughout our lifetime. So again, going back to our 4 different types of listeners. List number 1 is our dramatic listener. So typically this is somebody who is really emotional when they're listening. They are really involved in the conversation. They love the idea behind emotion, and they often feel the same emotions. So what they're trying to do is create a connection between themselves and the speaker by potentially kind of derailing the conversation and inserting their own stories while the person is talking. Now, obviously, this can interrupt them and maybe it'll even mess up the flow, but what they're trying to do again is create this connection. So what they suggest for the dramatic listener is to remind yourselves it's not all about me. Think, what does this other person, what does the speaker need out of this conversation, and how can I help them with that? The second listener is the interrupting listener. This is often somebody who wants to help. Maybe they think that time is of the essence and they think that there is a lot of value in speed. So what they try to do is move the conversation along by maybe solving your problems before you've even asked for them. So what we ask for the interrupting listener is that they take a pause as a word in a sentence, treat it just like another word, and then count to 3 before they even try to talk. What this will allow them to do is have the speaker maybe be able to continue what they were saying, maybe dive a little bit deeper and give them more details so that we're getting a more effective conversation out of it. The third listener is the lost listener. So this is somebody who typically might have a listening job and their listening battery is essentially drained by the end of the day. And they have a really hard time continuing to pay attention to the conversation. Maybe they don't even know why they're in the conversation. So you'll often see this by somebody who doesn't make eye contact while they're talking with you. Maybe they're using a device, maybe they're lost in their own thoughts. So what they suggest for the lost listener is they ask the speaker what they need from them. What is my role in this conversation, and what can I do in order to be able to harbor this conversation better? And the last one is the shrewd listener. So for the shrewd listener, this is typically somebody in an expert role. Maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're a counselor, and they've seen a lot of similar situations. So what they do is immediately go into diagnosis mode. They want to fix this person, they want to help this person, but what they're not doing is listening to the full conversation. So what they suggest for the shrewd listener is that they sit and try to ask 2 to 3 open-ended questions without any judgment and without giving any advice. What this allows them to do is get a deeper knowledge of maybe what the speaker is trying to communicate, again, without making these assumptions in advance. So now that you've got an idea of what the 4 basic listeners are, I would love if you took the quiz so you can get an idea of what maybe type of listener you are, what those goals are going to be for you to be able to work on, and they will go ahead and give you some suggestions and some tools in order to be able to improve your listening. I'm super excited to see what you guys think, and please let me know if you have any questions.